you got to work your butt off. If you think that you're gonna go and accomplish something really special and be the best in anything in the world, and you think you can do it without working, you make a big mistake. Because no matter what I did, if it was in bodybuilding or in acting or if it is in the political arena, it always took a lot of work. And you got to put out, and you got to, sometimes make a lot of sacrifices. Notice, if you're not willing to work hard, forget about it. So there's another rule that is very important.
I'll never forget a recent experience. Doing my business on Wall Street, getting on the train to come back to Midtown, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Normally, there's a lull. This train should be empty. But on this day, the train was full of people, all in business suits. A guy recognizes me, comes over and says, "Hey, are you Chris Gardner?" We started talking. Turns out I'm in a car with the first wave of the 55,000 people who had just been laid off by Citibank. And I noticed something. Everyone's holding a box. You've seen the boxes, you've seen them on television. They've got their house plant, their coffee mug, the pictures of their kids. And they're all going home. They're all going home to tell their wife, their husband, their children, and the landlord they don't have a job. I began to share with this young guy that, well, you know what? Yeah, you lost your job, but you haven't lost your skills, your talent, or your expertise. What we've got to do now is create opportunities where the skill, talent, and expertise can be transferable. Creating an opportunity and looking for a job are two different things. This could be prime time for pushing your button, rather, finding your button. What do I mean by that? Prime time to find that one thing that you love to do so much, you would get up in the morning and do it free. Prime time to find that one thing that the sun cannot come up soon enough in the morning because you want to go do your thing. This could be that time in your life.
Every single person, when they're in their teens, in their early 20s, they care so much about other people and how they're perceived and what impression they make. And I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be good at everything and be a good student and be prettier and skinnier and successful and all these things. And I cared about what people said about me and how they felt about me. And as I get older, I just realized that other people won't make me happy. It has to be from within me, and I need to keep doing whatever makes me happy. And whoever responds to that, great. Whoever doesn't respond to that, it's fine too. Mm-hmm. But the less I care about other people's opinions, the better I feel about myself, and the more I do things that make me happy.
I don't make notes. I react very instinctively to everything. I'm a great believer in traveling a great deal. I don't believe in meetings. More than 2 people in a meeting is too many. Really, it's true. Do you know about stand-ups? No, okay. So in Silicon Valley now, when you have a meeting, everybody stands in a circle like they're meditating. And that's how, maybe I should try that. I think the more you go out, the more you see, the more you experience life, the more you bring back to your day job. So as I was trying to say in my remarks, I think the problem about big corporations is you get a lot of people my age trying to hold on to their jobs and clinging on to their pensions and their retirement, and they're not experiencing new things, and they don't like change and they don't like disruption, so either they don't make a decision or they say no, and as a result they stagnate. So it's terribly important to bring people in from the outside and not to remain too insular, and also to hire as many young, bright people like all of you as you can, just to teach you how to think about things completely differently.
You're gonna play big, say big. Big. You're gonna play huge, say huge. Huge. You're gonna play ginormous, say ginormous. But first, take baby steps. You're gonna eat the elephant, but take one small bite first, chew it good. Right? We want so much so fast. My grandmother says baby, she starts every sentence with baby. I'm sure it's because she cannot remember all of our names. She said, baby, the best things you'll ever have from grandma will never come from the microwave. They always come from the oven. And I was like, I think somehow she's trying to give me a lesson here. And I realized that the best things that you're gonna create are gonna take time. Build it on cement, not sinking sand. You're gonna get tons and tons and tons of tools here. And you're gonna wanna fast forward. But when you fast forward, you build it on plexiglass, you build it on styrofoam, you build it on wood, you wanna build it on cement. Your dream is important enough to outlive you. Yes, yes? And so I realized that you can't Google download resiliency. You can't Google download tenacity. You can't Google download forgiveness. They're some of the best qualities and characteristics that's gonna take you a long way that you need to invest time in and energy in and intention in. You don't just get patience. I want patience, I'm waiting for patience. Somebody's gonna piss you off tomorrow. And now you get to test if you have patience. I realized that as I wanted to develop me, I had to be willing to climb, and I wanted to get to the top, and there's no elevator to the top. I gotta do my squats. I gotta work on my quads and my hamstrings and my calves, because I gotta climb to the top. We gotta climb.
You want to be great, like you want to be good. And you sort of set these funny expectations for yourself, you know? One of the funniest things that Fogerty ever said to me, he was like, yeah, I was learning to play the drums, but I realized that I would never be as good as John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, so I stopped. And I'm like, who is as good as John? But nobody. Like, what the, how could you do that? So, like, there should be no right or wrong, you know? You should just be cool with what you do and how you sound. Like, it's one of the things that I have a problem with, like a lot of those song contest shows on TV. Not only because, you know, whatever, it's corporate cheese or whatever, but I have a problem with, like, if my kid walked up on stage and sang her heart out as best as she could, and Jennifer Lopez said, like, no, sorry, that's not good enough, I'd be like, I would be so pissed, you know? Because that's not how it works. You know, you should go to a yard sale and buy a shitty old guitar and then go find a friend and get into your garage and just suck. That'd be awful. And then write some songs and become the biggest band in the world, you know? Because that's how it works. I mean, it works other ways too, I'm sure. But I mean, as a young musician, you know, first of all, you're not gonna make a living doing it. Like, accept that, realize that. Because then if you do, you're stoked. The reward of playing music should be the reward of playing music. Like, that's what you kind of get. Like, when I was a little kid, or when I was playing punk rock music as a teenager, like, there was never any career opportunity because we played punk rock music. Nobody wanted to buy that, but we loved to do it. It was so much fun. And like, if you start from a place like that you just love to create and you just love to play music and you can't stop thinking about it and you do it every day and you do it by yourself or you do it with your friends and that's enough for you to survive the rest of your life, that's great. And then, once you start getting good, you start playing for people. And once you start playing for people, if you're good, then those people will tell other people, that girl's really good. So then all of a sudden, you're playing to all these different people, and that, to me, is the most important thing. When it's you on stage, and people are seeing, when people see another person doing that, it's really inspiring. Like, it's cool to see a human being jamming. That's great.
A lot of so-called unhappiness is also a childish way of trying to change things by being as unhappy as you can about them. And the underlying unconscious or semi-conscious assumption is, if I'm really unhappy, somebody, perhaps God, is going to do something about it, or I'm going to prove him wrong I'm going to show him how dreadful it is, and then finally, this is an unconscious assumption behind the unhappiness, because you believe, if you're habitually and frequently unhappy, you believe that it has a purpose. It's an underlying assumption. Perhaps you wouldn't verbalize it in that way, but you believe that it works for you. Of course it doesn't, but things are going to change, but just need to be really unhappy, so that God finally, even if you don't believe in God, this can still be the mechanism, the underlying unconscious assumption behind it. It's something is going to happen. And of course the opposite is true, because the more unhappy you are with something, the more you are stuck in the situation.
My first passion before food was football. But I was always a good eater, great lover of food, and I grew up partly in Scotland, partly down south. So we had that sort of token of appreciation of home-cooked food. Then I was very lucky to get on a foundation course, spending the last year of my school at a foundation course, studying maths, English 2.5 days a week, and then learning to cook for 2.5 days a week, and it was a sort of new experiment. Now we had trouble with buying my first set of whites and chef knives, and we depended on the Banbury round table to come up with something like £85, £90 that Mum and Dad didn't have to get my first set of whites. So I still remember that day now, and how ecstatic and happy I was when I got given my first set of whites, my knives, and all of a sudden I wanted to go on that mission. Football was a sort of huge burning ambition, and I was trying to decide. Yeah, I had a horrific injury where I smashed my cartilage, and then all of a sudden, what do? You sit there and get bitter. But I had this little burning desire of this sort of chef, this ambition, and then I sort of channeled that frustration from football into cooking in a way that I just wanted to learn. The foundation course was huge. Did a Sitting Guild 706. I was a mature part-time student, and Mum and Dad didn't have the money to send me to college full-time. So it was hard, but what I did do is take a job in the industry. I worked 6 days a week and went to college 1 day a week. So then everything started becoming clearer. Got my qualifications, the basic, and then went to London. And that's where it really just took off.
Why do you prioritize sleep so highly? Just curious of what makes you so committed to that and the science behind it. Thank you for all you do. I find that I'm slower when I'm fatigued. So I find myself drifting. I have more symptoms of what we'll call ADD. So that my attention just drifts. And then I find I'll read a sentence or whatever and be like, God, I have to reread the sentence like 10 times. So that was just going, whoa. I'm not as efficient as I could be. And then the other is I find it a unique form of misery. There is an additional ring of hell that is saved just for people who are fatigued. I hate it so much. So it's misery, and I don't understand people that live a life that is miserable. I just don't get it. And then on top of that, I think you actually accomplish less if you're fatigued. So you're putting more hours, but you're actually getting less done per hour. So if being fatigued puts you at like 0.6 of what your output could be, and then being just like incredibly well rested, prioritizing that puts you at, it's, I guess mathematically I should be saying just 1, then like you have to make up 40% of the number of hours in waking up early just to break even, and then you put misery on top of that. So that's my N of 1 experience, is that I am so deadly efficient when I'm rested that I just get more done. So comparing those two side by side, I actually accomplish more.
Yeah, I believe in manifestation. I believe in, putting a rocket of desire out into the universe, and you get it when you believe it. You get it when you believe you have it. And that's the key, is like people still, they sit around going, when's it gonna come, when's it gonna come, when's it gonna come, when's it gonna come? And that's the wrong way. You're facing the wrong way, you're facing away from it. You have to go, it's here, it's here, it's here.
Whether it's a world champion boxer, a basketball player, a track star, a horse, even animals, I find out that this Mark Spitz, for an example, he's a world champion. But what made him the world champion was that he seemed to, at the right time when the pressure's down, at the last few yards, he can get that lead, or he's got enough left to make it. I fought Ken Norton, my last fight. The fight was even up until the last round, but I had something that he didn't have, although I'm much older. And that was the last-minute kick.
What's that last-minute kick? Is that something?
Just the stamina, the strength.
It's more than training.
The mental capacity, to realize what's involved and how important it is to make your body do something that's really too hard to do. Your mind makes you do it. Mark Spitz, this Olympic track star I was mentioning, he wasn't that much greater than all the people in the world, but sometimes he won by just that much. And a champion is just one who can come out at the last minute and close the show. As I say, the star closes the show. A 14, 15 round fight, and it's even, and usually this champion, you can depend on him to come through the last few seconds and find some energy from somewhere.
Is it discipline? Or
not only that, it's mental and physical. His body's in physical shape to do it, plus mentally too. He's got himself in condition where both fellas may be, sometimes the will can outdo the skill. And sometimes a fella's will is stronger than the man who's actually better physically, and the determination and weakens the other man just to see him so determined.
Every single human being has value, and my value is not determined on how I look or what job I have, or where I'm from, where I was born, how much money, all that stuff is nothing. So many teenagers, tease each other for how we look, and I tell the teenagers, do you think that I'm cool enough to be your friend? They're like, yeah, of course. I said, but I have no arms, no legs. And they said, doesn't matter. I said, really? So it doesn't matter that I have no arms, no legs? I said, no, it doesn't matter. I said, then actually, if it doesn't matter, then why do we kill each other with our words if it actually doesn't matter? Why do we look ourselves in the mirror and see ugly instead of valuable? I want to ask you today, what are you looking for? If I gave you $1 billion, would you be happy? If you gave me $1 billion, I'd be very happy. But then if my mum dies tonight, am I happy? No. With all the money in the world, I'll never be happy. Why? Because money is something that cannot heal the soul.
The cookie jar is something I invented. As you all know, your mom has a cookie jar, and sometimes you might have an Oreo, sometimes you might have a Chips Ahoy, sometimes you might have an oatmeal raisin cookie. You never know. It's just in there. My cookie jar has every single failure and success of my life, something I overcame. So what happens in time of life when you're stressed out and things get bad, even the hardest guy in the world, me, everybody thinks, and I think I'm the hardest guy in the world. You gotta believe that. You gotta believe you are something. I will, in my mind, reach into my cookie jar, and sometimes you forget how hard you are in times of need. Because you're stressed, but you forget, I'm a Navy SEAL, I'm a Ranger, I'm this and that, but you forget all that because your life sucks. I calm down, take that 1 second, get control of my life, reach in the cookie jar. Well, you got called nigger your whole life, and you're now the only person in history to do this, this, and this. Put it back in the cookie jar, reset my mind. You have to remind yourself of how badass you really are in times of need. That's the cookie jar.
I was a very headstrong young person, and by 1983 or 4, had started my own publishing company to publish my own books, realizing that no one else will publish me, and I was right about that. And so my first book, I saved my food money from Black Flag, little here, little there, and I saved enough to make a fold and staple book. I couldn't type, so I hand wrote out the things, and I made a dummy that I could offset, print, fold, and staple. And I sold them for $2. Mainly gave them away, but I sold enough, and they blew out. 500 just went. And then I took that money to make another print run of that. And from that money, I made my first paperback. And 33 years later, that's a fully staffed company with books in translation and hardcover editions and the whole 9 yards. But it started with, I'm gonna do my thing. I'll be City Lights Jr. without the talent. And I did that at the same time I was doing my first spoken word gigs. And why did I have the gumption and the audacity to start my own book company? Because I come from punk rock. I come from watching Ian MacKaye invent Dischord Records on his mom's kitchen table. I come from folding and gluing picture sleeves together. Black Flag had their own label. Of course you do it yourself. You want to make a book? Sit down and write it. Then go to the printing place. Where's a printer? Get in the phone book and find a printer. We make records, make some books. You just do it. It's like you don't even think about it, you just do it. And I'm sure that writing is just awful, but I did it. And without even hesitation, I'm making my own book company. Stop me, I dare you. I never thought about it twice. Just because DIY, man. Like, let your voice be heard.
Well, you know what? People do look at me and see me as creative because I've written so many books, and I am curious. But when I started off in college, in my freshman psych class, they gave us a test for each student to take on creativity. And there were 17 in that class. I can remember it well. And I was at the bottom of the class on creativity. I mean, I was like number 17 out of 17. And what the teacher posted the scores, and so, I mean, I saw how bad I was. And then I really felt bad, not only because I wasn't creative, but I was going to go pastor, I was going to go into ministry, I was going to teach, I was going to do sermons. And then I got to thinking to myself, I'm going to be another boring preacher. And you know, that just gripped me. I thought, oh, this is going to be awful. I'm going to bore people all my life, you know what I mean? And then I'm going to ask them to pay while they hear me. I mean, this is an awful deal. So, and so two things I did, and I talk about it in the book. One is I started filing. I started taking thoughts and quotes. And the reason I started doing that is I thought, if I'm not going to be good at what I say, I need to quote somebody that is good. And so I started filing things that other people would say. So I'd go around and I'd say, well, Ken said, you know what I mean? And Joe said, and Susie said. And so that at least I would be a little bit more interested. And that's how it started. But the big breakthrough I had was, and this will help everyone. How many of you would like to be more creative? Let me see your hands, okay? How many of you would like to just absolutely have an imagination that just took you to a new level? You know what I'm saying? Okay. How many of you already have that because you're on drugs? Okay. Well, here's the key. This will work for you. I promise it'll work for you because it worked for me. I made a major change in my early 30s from just having answers and being a leader that just had to cast vision, show everybody what I was doing and where we were going. And I started asking intentional questions. And I became a person, I ask questions all the time. Every day I ask questions. And I have found just asking questions will take you on exciting journeys more than anything else. You excel in that, Ken. I've watched you over the years. You'd excel really in that. But for my early years, I didn't ask enough questions, and so therefore, I didn't get enough ideas and thoughts from others. So when people say, I want to be more creative, what's step one? Step number one is ask more questions. Just go to people and start asking questions. It's amazing what you'll learn.
So that means taking things, using things in your life that are scars, using those moments as a weapon, right? Using those as using basketball as kind of like a vehicle through which to express yourself, right? So at that moment, for us to face the Celtics again, it's not about the Celtics. It's not about your opponent, it's about you. It's about you taking your inner struggles and channeling that through the game, right? As a way to unleash, right? So now it became a matter of how do I express that to them? How do I get them to that point where they figure this out for themselves? Because I can't say, hey, listen, I need you to play harder.
So what'd you do?
Well, I had to share my story. I had to open up to them and let them know I've dealt with things. This is the things that I use. This is how I go about focus. This is how I deal with adversity. This is how I deal with, arguing with my wife the day of the game and showing up to the game and still having that focus to be able to play. Like, I used those things to open up with them. And then in turn, they were able to take those stories and make them their own.
That whatever you do, somebody can do it better. You have to bring your A game in every single day. There's nothing unique about any one individual. What's unique is their passion, their ability to execute, to meet targets and exceed them. The minute you lose that ability, in capitalism, you're gone. It's a fair trade. The engine that makes you rich can take it all away from you. There are no guarantees. I think that's incredibly important.
It looks like you always go out of your comfort zone, right? Coming onto an island that was completely deserted, no fresh water, you didn't even have the money to buy it, and now you're sleeping on a tent on the beach trying to figure out how to get fresh water here. You do that often. You did it with the airline.
I mean, I was just somebody that experienced the bad experience of traveling on airlines. I was actually trying to get to the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, one day from Puerto Rico, and the same lovely lady was waiting for me, and I'd been away for 3 weeks, and American Airlines bumped the flight. And so I went to the back of the airport, I hired a plane, I hired a blackboard, I wrote Virgin Airlines one way, $29 to the BVI, went around all the people who'd been bumped, and I filled my first plane. And that got me thinking, you know, that airlines do bump people. They don't care about you or me, particularly in the air. And so so I then rang up Boeing and said, do you have any second-hand 747s?
No kidding. I mean, it was literally that you just sat in the airport and said, I'm starting an airline right now because I'm frustrated.
Exactly. And I think most of the best entrepreneurial ideas come out of frustration. I think, you know, if you're frustrated about something, the best way of sorting it out is get out and do it, and you've got yourself a business.
We know from our past experiences that big things start small. You know, the biggest oak starts from an acorn, and you've got to recognize, if you want to do anything new, you've got to be willing to let that acorn grow into a little sapling and then finally into a small tree, and maybe one day it'll be a big business on its own.
And in fact, that's one of the mottos for one of your initiatives, and forgive my pronunciation of the Latin, but Gradatim ferociter. What does that mean to you?
Well, it means step by step ferociously, and it's the motto for Blue Origin. Basically, you can't skip steps. You have to put one foot in front of the other. Things take time. There are no shortcuts. And but you want to do those steps with, you know, passion and ferocity.
Yeah, I started working at this video store. It was pretty much what you're talking about around that time, and it was great at first because I'd always hated day jobs and stuff, and so I got a day job, and it ended up being pretty good. But admittedly, I was there for 5 years. At a certain point, it was a narcotic. All right, I didn't have to keep pursuing my dreams because, you know, it's not what I want to do, but it's sort of kind of close. And if I didn't have an artist soul burning in me, I could have made myself happy with that. I could, if I didn't have an artist soul burning to get out, I could have, you know, walked backwards a couple steps and just done that. And that would have been a fulfilling, well, to anybody else, it would have been a fulfilling life. It wouldn't have been for me because I would have known I would have had something to say that I didn't get a chance to say. But it did put me to sleep for a while. And I've always just thought, I mean, what really got everything kind of truly going for me, you could point out a lot of different things, but the bottom line is the fact that I realized that even the group of people I hung around with, they were all great fellas and great gals. But, you know, it was easy for me to think that I was doing a lot because I was doing more to try to move myself forward than they were. But, you know, that's not, okay, I'm a big fish in a puddle. So what? All right, they're not doing anything. All right, so yeah, I'm doing more than them. But I realized that actually I need to get my ass out to Hollywood and meet other people who are, you know, like in my category or working a little higher, and I should be the weakest link in my chain that I have, and that'll make me be stronger. It'll make me run faster. I mean, like an analogy I've always used is, all right, if you run the 100-yard dash with people that can't run as fast as you, yeah, you'll win, hands down, you know that. But if you run with people much faster than you, all right, yeah, you might come in last every single time, but your time will be better because they're making you run all the faster. They're making you dig down just a little bit more. It doesn't matter that you won, your time is faster. And that's what I knew I had to do. I had to get out of Loserville and throw myself into a place where, like, this is what I do for a living.
One night, Chris had gone to bed. I'd been struggling. We still had all the same problems. We still had a lien on the house, still facing bankruptcy, still fighting like crazy. I was still unemployed. They still hadn't figured out like the solution yet for the business. And I was about to turn off the TV, and there on the TV, there was this rocket launching, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is it. I am gonna launch myself out of bed like a rocket ship, like NASA, right here, had launched me out of that bed. And I'm gonna move so fast that I don't think. I'm gonna beat my brain. Now, here's a really interesting point. I talk a lot about your instincts and inner wisdom. And we can get into this a little bit later, but a lot of us talk about the fact that you have a gut feeling. But what all this research that I've done for the book and all the speaking that I do, what I've discovered that's fascinating is actually when you set goals, when you have an intention on something that you want to change about your life, your brain helps you. What it does is it opens up a checklist, and then your brain goes to work trying to remind you of that intention that you set. And it's really important to develop the skill, and I say that word purposefully, the skill of knowing how to hear that inner wisdom and that intention kicking in and leaning into it quickly. So for me, my brain saying, that's it, right there, move as fast as a rocket, Mel. I wanted to change my life. And I think most people that are miserable or that are really like dying to be great and dying to have more, we want to change. We want to live a better life. We want to create more for our families. We want to be happier. The desire is there. Again, it's about how do you go from knowledge to action. So the first thing in this story that's important is realizing that the answer was in me. And my mind was telling me, pay attention. Could have also been the bourbon. I mean, I had a couple of Manhattans that night. But anyway, the next morning, the alarm goes off, and I pretended NASA was there. It's the stupidest story. I literally went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I counted out loud, and then I stood up. And I'll never forget standing there in my bedroom. It was dark, it was cold, it was winter in Boston. And for the first time in 3 months, I had beaten my habit of hitting the snooze button. I couldn't believe it, and I thought, wait a minute. Counting backwards? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, the next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. The next morning I used it again and it worked. And then I started to notice something really interesting. There were moments all day long, just like that 5-second moment in bed, where I knew, knowledge, what I should do. And if I didn't move within 5 seconds, my brain would step in and talk me out of it. Every human being has a 5-second window, might even be shorter for you. You have about a 5-second window in which you can move from idea to action before your brain kicks into full gear and sabotages any change in behavior. Because remember, your brain is wired to stop you from doing things that are uncomfortable or uncertain or scary. It's your job to learn how to move from those ideas that could change everything into acting on them.
I've been making music now with, like Tony Bennett for a couple of years, and Elton John is, one of my closest friends, and his husband David. And they just have showed me that, like, I'm a baby in my artistry, and I just have to keep making music and keep going. And so my focus really for this album is showing that to young girls and to boys that want to make music, that you don't have to get lucky on the internet. It's not a social media game. You don't have to find the hot producer and get the hot track, to be a star. You can just learn how to play an instrument and sit in your room and practice and write songs and poetry, and then you can go around the corner to the bar and meet other artists that do the same thing that you do, and you can hang out and talk about music and write songs, and then you can play at the spot around the corner and gain one fan, and then do it over and over and over again until you're discovered.
You need to know what your unique strengths are and be willing to delegate. So I would say that the question of whether you should take a skill, learn it yourself, delegate it to someone else, or hire a new team member are determined by having a very accurate self-assessment and assessment of your team's skills. Not only what you can do, but what you should be doing. That's very important. So if you're a startup CEO or founder and you have a team of, say, 2 to 10 people, as soon as you have funds to higher, you should not be focused on the things that you are bad at. Sounds very, very intuitive, but it's not, because you might have enough time to do those things, but the question is, do you have the attention to dedicate to those things so they're not an interruption? Especially if you're a venture-backed startup and you're competing against other companies that also have a lot of funding, the game and the race goes to the swift. So you have to have a lot of velocity.
ESPN called me. They did a story on me this past summer, but they called me one day and I picked up the phone. They said, "Is this Inky Johnson?" I said, "Last time I checked, I'm Inky Johnson." They said, "Is this the same guy that said if you could change what happened to you, you wouldn't?" I said, "Absolutely." They said, "It's our understanding the game of football meant the world to you." I said, "At one point, it did." They said, "It's our understanding that your family was banking on you making it to the NFL so they can have a better way of life." I said, "Yep, that's correct." They said, "We're coming to see you." I said, "All right, cool, come on." They said, "But we don't want to see you in Atlanta. We want to see you in Neyland Stadium on the exact yard line where your life changes. The same time of day. The only thing that won't be present is Air Force's team." All right, cool. And so they take me to Neyland Stadium, they put me on the exact yard line where my life changed. They said, "Now tell your younger self why you wouldn't stop your injury if you could. If you could be in the NFL right now making millions of dollars, tell your younger self why you wouldn't change that situation if you could." And I say the reason I wouldn't change it, believe it or not, it has nothing to do with me. Like on a personal level, he thought I was going to say, because of the man that I've become, the perspective that I've acquired, my faith has been fortified. He thought I was going to say something like that. I said, no, it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the lives that have been affected by the result of the process and the thing that I represent in the world. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think perseverance. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think don't quit. What my spirit represents when somebody see me, they think that's a quality individual right there. What my character represents in the world. And every single day we're putting something out like that represents something. When people see that, they think it's a thought that comes to the mind. When he said gold standard, he gave me that, I felt a certain type of way. When he gave me the gold standard, I felt a certain type, I felt different. Gold standard, I felt like that went with me. Because I think in what I do, the line of business I'm in, I'm the gold standard. Because I don't compromise. And every single day, I'm going to give you my very best. You can bet your bottom dollar. Every single day, I'm going to bring that gold standard to life. And I'm not just bringing it in one aspect of life. I'm bringing it in every single aspect of life. I'm not going to be one of these people in the world that's a public success, but they're a private failure. Meaning they give everything they got to one aspect of life, but the other areas, they lack off. No, I'm going to give every single thing I got to every aspect of my life because I represent something. When people see me, they think something. Whether that's character, never giving up, never surrendering. And the thing that we can never do is forget what we represent. Because that's how guys end up under a bridge on a cardboard box sleep. They forget what they represent when life hits them with adversity. My only charge for you, never forget what you represent.
There were other things that I probably should have done, not from my perspective. I mean, from my point of view, I did the right things. Every film that I've done, I'm happy that I made that choice. I don't have any regrets whatsoever. But I mean, in terms of sustaining box office, bankability, I should have done a few other things that I didn't do, but I'm glad I didn't do them, me.
Because it wouldn't have been you.
Yeah, it would have been for the wrong reasons. Everything that I've been lucky enough to do, I did for the right reasons.